It's Jeff Mayhew. It's John Beatty. It's Politics and Parenting, where we talk about politics, but we talk about it differently. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jeff. And I've been thinking about our past couple episodes. It's been very politics heavy, and just want to share a little parenting thing that I did this weekend. So I was working on changing the oil for our minivan, and our oldest son had been he got in trouble for something else, so he couldn't go to grandma's house. So he was sort of hanging out. But I took that as an opportunity to just sort of like show him how to change oil, and not that I would expect him to go out there and unplug the drain pan and drain it and everything. But I explained like, oh, you got to run the car a little bit to warm the oil up. You got to he was interested in where the filter came out. He was intrigued by putting the oil back in the car and sort of how that all worked. He's like, do you clean out the tubes inside the engine? And I said, no, that's just the system. The oil kind of does it on its, the oil going through cleans it out and on. So it was a nice father son car maintenance bonding activity that I think hopefully he got a little bit out of, because he's trying to figure out life right now as a young 8-year old, and no better place than learning how to change the oil in your car to learn about the real world, as they say.
I mean, that's parenting 101, right? Take a negative and turn it into a positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So your kid has done something wrong and he got punished. He wasn't able to go to grandma's house, but he turned it into quality time with dad. There's a lesson to be learned there. And if you got an 8-year-old that is misbehaving in any form or fashion, chances are giving them a task to do is helpful. Keeping them
Yes.
busy so they stay out of trouble. And they got to learn things in order to be able to accomplish tasks. And right around that time, 8, you're just kind of getting to that like really awkward independent stage where you're like in between what you can do. You've now mastered all the tasks that you had coming out of like your toddler stage, but you're still kind of like on the bottom end of your like teenage stage. So like it's just a tough spot to be in at 8 years old. No wonder the kid's getting in trouble. It's hard to be 8, man.
Hard to be eight. Actually, his favorite thing was the hydraulic lifts because he was kind of like, this is really cool that I can lift a car by just like pushing a lever a couple times. So I
Oh,
think, that was an interesting
he he
physics lesson.
he had a natural tendency towards power, I see.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, John, the last few weeks we've played like talking about like what would you do as a candidate, if you were running for office, because it's election time, because it's Virginia and it's always election time. But I was thinking, what people really want to know, really, they really don't care what you're going to do when you get to Congress, John. What they really want to know is who is the candidate, right? So like I figured like let's just ask some like candidate questions. Like let's move my first one. John, as a candidate or as a person, I guess, what is your best quality?
I think so. One of the things my wife and I like to do, not to flip everything, deflect, but we like to think about temperaments and things, and understanding what your temperament is kind of helps you figure out who you are and your strengths and weaknesses. And so I'm a phlegmatic melancholic, so I think a little too much sometimes. But being a phlegmatic, you're trying to please people, and I think one of my strengths is trying to listen to people, understand their problems and successes, and then try to like help them overcome those problems. And so, like my day to day job working in the IT department of a school is it's honestly like fixing lots of little problems for people, and then trying to figure out what's the big issue behind something that can actually make a lot of people's lives easier, and then my life easier by fixing that problem for them. So it's being able to listen and to learn what's ailing someone, and then to actually do what I can to solve those problems if it's possible. I know sometimes it's not, and then you just kind of you're part therapist for that, helping someone go through it. But it is really trying to serve people in that respect. So I don't know. What would you say your strength is?
Um,
You care too much, right?
yeah, that's the classic. I just care too much. I mean, persuasion. I'm pretty good at persuading people. I mean, persuasion is a difficult thing to navigate as a person because you never really like want to make somebody do something, but at the same time, like you think it's better and you think that other person is missing a piece of information. Like that's kind of what I see persuasion as, is just like fulfilling all of the information dots for the other person, so they kind of see see it the same way that I see it. We kind of come to an agreement. I feel like I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty relentless. I get an idea stuck in my head, like uncap the house, and I will, I'll sit and I'll talk to anybody that wants to talk about it to persuade them to my side. And you know, I'd say I'm pretty good at it. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Like, so I'll say your best quality, and because we've known each other for about a year, I think that you kind of hit yours on the
About a
head.
year. It's been a year and a half.
Is it been a year? Is it been that
Been a
long
year.
already?
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, John. So I would say like your patience and understanding. Like you said, like you are a very good listener. And I can tell that because of the questions you ask me back when we talk, right? And that makes me feel good because I like to be heard when I'm speaking. Like I say a lot of stuff, but I want people to like ask me questions back and like understand what I'm saying. And
You're
it's
not speaking for your own health, is what you're saying. Is
no, I'm not. I mean, maybe sometimes I am. My kids would say, or my wife might say that I am, but that I think you're right. Patience, understanding, listening. You hit it on the nail on the head there.
well, I will say you did persuade me about uncapping the house, so that's there. And then we were at the Great Maine this past weekend, and we were talking to one of the barkeeps, and he was like, "Yeah, Jeff got me to understand uncapping the house." And then I'm all about it now. So it's I would agree that that's a strength of yours that's very valuable in the political sphere.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one to have if you're a candidate. I think both of them are because, like we said, like what is, and this kind of falls into this, my philosophy on communication and like people active and passive. What did we say when we were teaching our classes for representation? What did we say the two main things a representative's responsibilities are?
Communicating and listening, or
So
listening and communicating, I think is
in,
how we
in
were.
informing and listening.
Yeah.
Listen to the citizens and inform the citizens. You're a great listener. I'm a great persuader. We're on the way to like we're a good team. But we're not perfect, are we, John?
Wow. Some
So
days.
what is what is your worst quality? You might have to consult with your wife to figure this one out.
No, yeah. So I did ask her about this, and I agree with what she said. It's just sort of a negative self doubt. Letting the self doubt get in there, and something doesn't go right. Going back to being phlegmatic and caring very much what people say. Sometimes when you get negative feedback, it kind of, and then adding that melancholic aspect into it, it kind of gnaws at you, and then you kind of think, well, maybe I'm not good enough for this, and maybe I should stop this or quit this because it's just not good for me. So that's something I'm getting better about. Like I remember my first job. Well, I guess many jobs I had this, but I always was very cautious about like talking with my boss and stuff, and sort of like any perceived negativity I think would like really hit me hard. And so for a while I would struggle where like if I get a message from my boss or something like, hey, let's talk next week at 10 a.m. Like for a whole week, all I could think of was like, this is going to be bad. What's the word? So it took me a while to break out of that and to just kind of think about the facts. When someone says they want to talk with you, do you have any reason to suspect that? And I never did because I was a really great worker, a great employee. But it's just like it's that negative self doubt that can creep in there and really make it difficult to finish a project. It's easy to start stuff, it's difficult to finish stuff. So getting much better at that. It comes up every once in a while, but I'm better about not letting it get to me and pushing through. Because like it's one of those things. Like once you realize you're being silly, you just kind of like you can see all the other things that the real facts on the ground, and realize that negativity is usually completely unwarranted. So I don't know. What do you think is a problem that you struggle with?
Well, according to my wife, I was just trying to find it because I knew you were to send it back to me. What did she said? She said,
You care too much, right? That's what it is.
kind of. She said you take everything, including feelings of. Hold on, where is
But you
it?
take it. What was you told me?
Oh,
You
so
take on other people's
I.
problems.
She said I'm too empathetic. I take on everybody else's problems and feelings and absorb them, and I try to fix everything. She said you're a fixer. Um, I, I I so like I get why it's a negative, right? Like I live it, so like I feel it as a negative personally. The whole like absorbing other people's like feelings and stuff is difficult. I don't want to do it. It just happens. Um the fixing thing, like I don't know, like I like to fix things, like um I, yeah, not everything's my responsibility and I don't have to fix everything, and I'm trying to do better about limiting what I'm working on. But overall I see that as a positive, but I get where my wife's coming from with the negative thing. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, no, it can be tough if you take on too many things and then you're not able to give everything it's appropriate to. But like all flaws, there can be some positive in there that it's just you're taking it too far.
All right, so next question, John, of our get to know the candidate. What's your favorite part about fatherhood?
Oh, that's a good one. It's definitely watching your kids grow. And for me, this was crystallized when our oldest Paul was about one. We got a dog, a puppy that was about 6 months old. And so, a puppy at 6 months, a boy at 1 year old, they're developmentally very similar. They need to be taken to do their business, and they need lots of walks, lots of exercise, attention. But the coolest thing about that was watching my son like really grow and being more capable and being able to grow new skills and stuff. And like a dog can be kind of like that, where you can teach him to sit and to roll over, and then you can play fetch for forever. But like to watch a boy, and your daughters too, like really grow day by day, bit by bit, and to sort of realize that responsibility. I think that's a powerful thing about fatherhood and something I enjoy. And it gives you the reasons to stick, try to be around when you can, and to correct them, because that if you don't sand off that rough edge, that it's going to grate on someone else later on in life. And that's or like talking about failures, like that's a failing on your part. You had that opportunity to fix them and make them better person. And so I really appreciate that aspect of just watching them grow, seeing them grow. I mean, like that 1 year old boy is now 12 years old and crushing it with a tuba in middle school band, like things like that. So it's fun just to see that, and you wonder where he's going to go. It's not uncommon now to think about like what kind of career he might have, and he's got his own ideas, and he's all wrong because I know exactly where he's going to end up. But it's it's things like that. It's a lot of fun, and that's a real joy about being a father.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you find rewarding as part
I
of that?
mean, observing the kids, watching them solve problems on their own is really
Mhm.
enjoyable for me. As much of a fixer as I am, as my wife would say, I am, I like to be pretty hands off to a degree. I'm a hands on and hands off. I love to give my kids plenty of opportunity to solve their problems before I step in and like help them. Like I'll give them the opportunity. Do you want help or do you not want help? You can ask me for help. You don't have to. You can try to figure it out on your own. Now there always comes a point as a father where you need to step in and like guide and, like you said, sand off those rough edges. But I think there's freedom in creativity. There's freedom in solving your problems for yourselves. And I really want my kids to have that opportunity when they're young.
Mhm.
Although, as they get older, so I just recently so my middle son is 13. He will be 14 soon. So just a couple years older than Paul. And just so you know where you're going next, is my son has a girlfriend. And, talk about one of my favorite moments as a father is when he told me that he liked a girl and then like asked me what to do. It sounds really silly, but it's a really special moment because you're able to give him all the information that you learned from like marrying his mom and creating him and then kind of like help him avoid some of maybe the mistakes that you made when you were younger. Give him
Yeah.
for me it was like give him the confidence that he can like go talk to this girl. Like that was the big thing is when he brought it up, and because it took a lot of confidence to come at tell me, I'm sure that wasn't easy for him. So I wanted him to like understand, like, hey, this is awesome. If you can come talk to me about it, all you got to do is go talk to her about it. And once you can do those two things, like you're pretty set, just be respectful, be polite. You're going to make mistakes, ask for forgiveness. So that's mine.
So that, yeah, no, that's good. I mean, like, and so that's a good part. Did you ask what difficult part was? I think you said what's a positive part.
I asked you the positive. You
Yeah,
want me
what's
to
a
tell
difficult
you
part for you? No, I'm gonna say, yeah, turn the tables on you.
the difficult part of fatherhood? Everything else.
Hmm.
I mean, okay, you want to see a difficult part? The boy he went to a dance with the girl and they sent pictures in the group thread with the moms to me. And I look at this, what used to be my little boy, and he doesn't look like my little boy anymore. He just looks like this adult human being, and I can barely remember what he looks like as a human being or as a little boy. That's the most difficult part of being a father, is watching your kids transition from one stage to the next, and like this moment where you just don't even feel like you know them anymore, just for a split second. Like it's not real. It's all like, imagine it. He's still the same boy he always was. He just got a deeper voice. He's a little bit more articulate. He's bigger, he's stronger. He does all the heavy lifting at the house now. But I would say that's probably the most difficult, that and getting them to behave.
Yeah,
Let's face it.
but that's just roughing. I mean, that's roughing off sanding off the rough edges. It's a
How about you?
process. I think it's, again, like you talking about, like your son being able to come to you. It's just sort of, how do you make yourself available? Because it's difficult when you got a job and then you've got other responsibilities on top of that. I mean, like the school board's been tough on the family, I would say, just being available but or away. But we try to have family dinners pretty much every night when we can. So like if I've got a 5:30 meeting, that means I have to leave the house at like 5. So I'll get home at like 4:30 and we'll just have a quick family dinner and try to make that work. So it's and then just sort of on one-to-ones, not getting frustrated when he's trying to ask you questions, when you're trying to listen, like your audiobook on the way into work or something, like, being around, I think, is something that every child wants from their parents. And I think in our day and age, it's so easy to sort of, park them somewhere with a TV babysitter maybe or something, and kind of do your own thing. And like that's a real challenge. Like, stay off your phone when you're around the kids, and be present for them. So I think that's something I struggle with a lot and try to work on getting better. Also not getting angry when they disobey and make mistakes. And, I think that's another
That's the eternal
challenge.
struggle.
It's the eternal struggle.
That is
So
the eternal struggle, right?
I am just human.
Kids are surprisingly frustrating. All right. So, okay. So here we go. Here's a good question. It's
Mhm.
not really a question, it's a statement. I'm ordering you around now, John.
All right.
Share a story from your childhood that shaped you into the man that you are today.
Well, there's a lot of stories. I think you could think of one. I
Just
was
one.
listening. No, I know.
You got to be the politician, man. You got
So I
to.
was listening to some other candidates video, and he was talking about, like, oh, I don't remember, like in high school, I was working cleaning something up or another, and I was like, every politician has their story, like, oh, I was busting tables at age 15 and stuff, and I still will say I was busting tables at age 15, but I think
All right, Youngkin.
what was big for me was, like, growing up, when I was 8, we had a big snowstorm roll through. And I think this is kind of when I, like, discovered the ability to, like, sell your time for money. So I, like, just went up and down the road, offered to shovel people's driveways, and I made like $100 that day. And that was probably the most money I'd ever had in my life. And then I went to go, like, that night we went to, I think the roads had cleared up. And so we went to Toys R Us, and I needed a bike. So we got a cool bike. And I remember, like, our friend who was with us was like, oh, you got to get the Shimano brakes. Like, the Shimano brakes are the best. And I got to say, those brakes, they work pretty well on that bike. So, like, I think that was a big story for me growing up, because it kind of, it was a tremendous amount of independence at a young age. Just kind of realizing, like, you could make your way in the world. You gotta ask people. And I'm not always the best at asking people. But you know, if you have something you, again, like if you can solve someone's problem, they're willing to remunerate, give you money for that. So I think that was an early story in my childhood where that was big. I think going back to busing again, like a lot of stories. I got fired from Outback Steakhouse when I was in high school because I like was just overcommitted. Like I had like some kind of acapella concert in high school, and then there was like a lacrosse game, like way too many things going on, and I couldn't get someone off. So I just like, whatever, I just won't show up. They won't care. And like the next week I went in, kind of slunk in the back, and the manager was like, "What are you doing here? Like you don't have a job here anymore." Um, and so that was the first time I ever got fired, and it was just like it was a shock for me. So that was good to kind of learn like you got to be responsible. And then the sort of the happy ending to that was I had a bunch of friends that worked at Outback, and so after a couple months, they sort of lobbied for me to come back, and like that was my only, really honestly, that was my only infraction. Was not showing up that one day. So the manager kind of like he's like, yeah, have him come in, talk to me. And so I talked in, apologized, we made up for it, and I'm like got my job back, and I worked there for the rest of high school and a couple of years in college, just on a vacation. So like, I think that was sort of the tail end of that like responsibility growing up, and you know, having to show up for when you say you're going to show up. It's key. So
Yeah.
I don't know. What's a story from your childhood that made you the Jeff you are today?
Oh man, I don't know. There's a lot of stories from
See, a lot of
childhood.
stories. Just one,
Uh,
But if you're
just
good, you can parlay it into like three or four.
yeah. So when I was in middle school, my dad thought it would be a good idea to teach my brother and I some responsibility. And while most dads get their kids a dog, my dad got us a cat because we live out in Gainesville. My dad grew up in Oaksville from a lot of his years, worked on the family farm, which was a dairy farm. So I think it was just like teaching me something that he knew. I did not enjoy it so much. Because in middle school, living out in Gainesville, and then my middle school was in Manassas, I had to catch the bus at 6 a.m. I had to
Oof.
catch the bus at 6 a.m. I had to feed the calf at 4:30 a.m. So I had to get up and like feed the calf. And it was like imitation milk. It was basically like it smelled just like formula. And I say this as I remember when I had twins and it was 4:30 in the morning or 3:30 in the morning, we were doing the feedings together and I'm making formula. And I had that rush memory back to when I was like 11 and bottle feeding the calf and just like, but I gotta say it was good experience because it trained me to get up at a really odd hour and feed another living thing to keep it alive. Consistency, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, for me, we talked about fatherhood. What are our strengths? What do we like about it? That was one of the hardest parts about fatherhood for me was the first year when they're just eating and pooping
Yeah.
and I have to wake up in the middle of the night and like feed them. I don't, you don't always have to do that, but when you have twins, it becomes a little bit more necessary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that would be my story. I got it. I got two stories out of there, by the way.
There you go. That's good.
All right, let's see. Do I have more questions for you, John? Hold on. Oh, how did you meet Katie? Katie.
Oh, that's a great story. Going back to restaurants. So we actually met. We're like high school sweethearts by the deadline because we met second semester of senior year through some friends. And then we coincidentally ended up both going to Virginia Tech. So we were sort of like we went to prom together in high school. Checked that box as high school sweethearts, and then went to Virginia Tech, dated all throughout college. And I think at some point we decided we should get married. And so we got married after I graduated. She still had a semester left, and yeah, that's all there is. It was just one of those weird coincidences. I think it was.
We call that fate.
That's fate. Yeah, no, but it's accentuated by like social media because Facebook was kind of big at the time. So I think I'd like just said hi to her at the restaurant, and then as everyone did at that time, you would just go friend people that you met because you had to friend everyone. And then we started like just Facebook commenting. I think it wasn't even messaging. It was just like commenting on posts. One point of contention in our marriage is that she's a Chicago Bears fan and I'm a Green Bay Packers fan.
Ooh.
So that was, something we would just kind of rib each other about on Facebook. And it was just, talking. And then I think going to college together. And I think one of those things with college relationships, from what I've seen, probably any relationship, is either you kind of grow together, you grow apart. And so I think we both kind of grew up together during college, enjoyed similar hobbies and things. So that was helpful. She had a car, so she could take me home during the breaks. It was also beneficial.
That's always like the struggle of the college kid. They got to have the friend with the car if they don't have the car.
That's right. So yeah, it was just real kind of weird, very much happenstance, like, as I think a lot of situations.
So in your story, you said, and we got married. How did you propose?
Well, that's the other idiosyncrasy of the relationship. I think as we count, I proposed like 3 times, because I think like a year in, I kind of realized like I wanted to marry her, but we're still in college. So I was like, oh, we should get married. As we were like walking home one night. So that was the first time. And then I think a year before I graduated, like December before I graduated, we were at her parents' house, and her mom's like, why don't you two get married already? And so that kind of got us thinking about it. So like, and then I asked her father for permission, told my parents this is what we're going to do, with the intent to like get married after a year. And so that summer I basically asked her if we could get married, and she said yes, but I didn't have a ring. And then so that was the beginning of summer, and I was working an internship, and so by the end of the summer I had saved up enough for a ring. So the third time I proposed, like, she was at my house in front of my parents with an actual ring. Again, she said yes, so I was very certain by that time. So it was a process, as many things are.
Oh, that's good. Well, at least you finally got her that ring.
Mm-hmm. Because that's all that matters.
And she consistently said yes. That's also very good.
Also very good.
I mean, it would have been pretty bad if by the time you got the ring, she was like, nah, I'm out of here.
That would have been very, very detrimental.
That's like trauma right there.
How did you meet Vanessa?
So we met online so we both had kids when we met. I was my second marriage, her next relationship, and we met online. We had our first date at Coastal Flats, and
in Tyson's,
in Fairfax.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we hit it off. We had a good night. I remember, and she remembers, I texted her at the end of the night, like when I got home, and I called her and I left her a voicemail because she didn't answer. And I guess like just the way that I spoke on the voicemail, she was just like, this is really weird. And like, not like weird, like that weird, but just like super professional, like it was a work call. She's like, why'd you leave your voicemail like that? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what to say. You're a girl. This is hard. But we ended up going on a few more dates, and then the rest is history.
The rest is history. How'd you propose?
So I took the kids. So Gabriel was 8 at the time. Julia and Oliver were 2. And I planned a photography session at the battlefield in Manassas. And we got photos done. And halfway through the photo session, I got the ring, and I got Julia to carry the ring over to her and propose. So we got some really nice pictures. Awesome. And yeah, it was pretty cool. It was, getting my little girl to do the work for me, because I mean, she could have said no to me, but she couldn't have said no to Julia.
Nope. No, not at all. So what
right, we got to get some more like standard questions in here. What do the people want to know about candidates? I don't know.
What Ivy League did you go to, Jeff?
I did not go to school. So I barely graduated high school. I did not attend any type of college. I tell people that I basically didn't read until my 30s, which it's like, I don't know. It's true and it's not true. It's not like I couldn't read, but I had like maybe 3 or 4 books I had managed to get through in my entire life. I had a lot of books that I'd started, maybe got 20 pages in or halfway in or a few chapters here and there and just never finished. But in my mid 30s, I started reading pretty heavily and, got down to, or I was reading like, I don't know, about 1,000 pages a week at one point. And I guess that's my education. So
Hmm.
that's my degree. I
That's all they
read
do
that.
in college
I read
anyway.
that one right there this weekend, along with like 2 other books, and that was fantastic. Can you see that?
Yeah, Congress overwhelmed.
Congress overwhelmed.
Are they? I heard it's a cakewalk. You just sit there and fundraise all the time. Nothing else to do.
it turns out there's not enough people working in Congress.
Hmm.
That book talks about it. That we need to expand the capacity.
Actually, that was an interesting thing in that Senate history thing I was talking about. Because like in the 50s and 60s, like senators and I think the representatives used to do a lot of their own work, and then they began to feel overwhelmed, and then they felt the need for like more staff, more permanent people to hang around and to do the research and the legwork so that they could work more on the policy stuff. And then now we are where we are today.
Well, like so Congress is supposed to they're a check to the executive power, right? So
Hmm.
they're co-equal powers, and Congress is supposed to provide oversight to the executive. Now, with the congressional representation, the Senate and the staff, according to the book, it's about 20,000 employees. Now,
Per representative.
no, 20,000 total employees for the legislative like branch with staff and all of the committees and everything. So that's according to that book. So I looked up what the staff number for the executive department is. Now it's like 4 million if you include the military, but if you back out
Hmm.
the military, it's like 70,000. So now think about that. Congress has to
But that's
provide
that's without contractors and all the other things that go into that too. Like that's probably just like raw federal employees, right?
exactly. And so Congress is supposed to provide oversight to the executive when it has half of the staff. They're outmatched
Hmm.
completely. Like, uncap the house, please. My question to you is, what in history inspired you to run, to be a candidate?
So one of my other favorite facts is that the 4th of July is actually my favorite holiday. So I think reading American history made me fall more and more in love with kind of what our country is, what we've been given, just kind of really how special it is in human history. The very fact that we have a lot of trust for other people. And so what I thought about, again, being that sort of person who wants to go there and fix people's problems, I just see like there's a lack of the same perspective for our legislators. Like they just don't seem to cherish the gifts they're given. And so I wanted to just kind of get involved because I think we need more people that appreciate what we have, that realize that there's so much good out of, there's always, like it's a human institution, there's always bad things, always bad history that we can fix. We have fixed, we're fixing, if you will. Um, but I really think like, that the United States is a real gem that can be, it's fragile because if you put the wrong pressures on it and stuff, it will crack and fracture. So I wanted to get involved because I wanted to preserve that, preserve our country for our children. As trite as that might sound, like that's what it is. But I think it's really more of a um, understanding like how special we were. And then on the flip side, I think kind of weirdly, oddly, being a computer science major, not studying a lot of political philosophy and stuff, I too kind of got into reading in my late 20s, early 30s, and just sort of dove deep into political theory. And again, like I don't think people study it as much as you or I do, for the most part. Like they go to the Ivies, they go to Harvard, but it's more now they're in a network And that's really what you get out of that. You don't really get an education anymore. And I think um, no one, like I love Cicero and stuff. No one reads Cicero. And I think more people need to read Cicero. So it's about, spreading the word of my boy Cicero. It's about trying to teach people, like we do with the Madison Republicans, about governance. And I think being in elected office, it's actually leading by example, where sort of people expect you to be a certain way, and you really have to, if what as I believe, like you've got to have to act differently. And there's sort of a decorum that goes with an office, and just kind of it's fun to kind of live up to that and sort of be in the swamp, if you will, the local swamp, and try to do it the right way. So that's what I enjoy the most of being an elected official. That's why perennial candidate feels like at this point. And just like like we need more of that, more of a historical perspective, and that's what I love about you. And I think more of a true governing philosophy rather than just sort of doing it for the Facebook likes.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, and that was, that's one reason that really drove me is like you said, people go to Harvard and they become politicians, but they don't understand political theory. They don't study political theory, and it's like out of
or they might, like, on a cursory level, that like they read
yeah,
one book or something, and
yeah, but like they don't study political theory, right? And that's concerning, as somebody who does study political theory, to realize that the way that the political system works is if you have a whole bunch of people that understand it working inside of it. When you have a whole bunch of people that don't, and maybe a few that do, it provides, bad results. And that's why, like, I when we met, I was on board because I was like, hey, this guy's talking Cicero. More people need to talk Cicero,
mm-hmm.
And it's like we get the politicians that run for office because they how many people, and especially on the Republican side, actually work in the swamp but run as candidates to drain the swamp. Like, isn't it ironic? Like, I mean, almost everybody, especially like in where we live, like everybody that lives around here works for the federal government, and like
In
they're
some way or
all
another, yeah.
in some way or another, either for a contractor or whatever, and they run as like the person that's like the outsider that's going to drain the swamp. And it's just like, and that's why, like, again, one of the reasons I wanted to run is because, like, I'm just a dad who's just running for office. Like, yeah, I want to drain the swamp, and that includes you too, buddy. Like, I want to provide some oversight because most of those federal employees, as we mentioned before, work for the executive branch.
Mm-hmm.
And and then they're running for Congress, and when they get to Congress, they'll quickly realize how outmanned they are and how they can't really do anything. And if they studied political theory, they might be running on congressional reform as opposed to like the traditional candidate things, like
Cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes.
yeah, which need to be done as well, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, if you really studied your job and you were prepared for your job, you'd realize like the biggest pressing problem you have, which is not enough staff. There's not enough people there in Congress. Uncap the House.
Yeah, you need more you just need more workers to actually get the job done that branch is supposed to get done.
Yeah. All right, I feel like that's enough for the people, right?
That's what I want to know.
I mean, that's more questions than we got out of debate forum or
that's right.
And you got longer to answer, like, hey John, can you tell me the first time that you drove a car? And remember, keep your answers to yes or no.
And then after that yes or no, some kind of like subjective question, like, did you crash?
Hey John, can you explain the feeling the first time that you got a bad grade on school? And can you please remember to keep your questions to yes or no?
And what was the teacher's name too? Everyone, can everyone just raise their hand if it was Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith?
The teacher's name was Miss McGarvey. I'm sorry, sir. I asked you to keep your answer to yes or no.
is a lightning round because someone blew through their 30 seconds multiple times. And
In the lightning round question, can you explain your foreign policy with both China and Russia? You have 25 seconds. Go.
what it's like, people. That's what it's like.
That's what it's like running for office. All right. Well, this is a good episode. Very little politics. I hope people like the change of pace on that. A little bit of parenting, a little bit of getting to know the candidates. Maybe we're candidates, maybe we're not. I don't know, John. What are we gonna do? I know,
No one's filed yet.
With so many kids. All right. Well, anything going on? We gotta. You want to leave the people with before we get out of here, John?
I think, find a book that interests you that maybe someone recommended and just start with that. That's a good place to go. And if I may be so bold as to recommend a book, I mean, there's a lot of them. You could do On Duties by Cicero. If you like American history, you could start with What Hath God Wrought. That's a real good book into sort of a calamitous time in our history, but it mirrors a lot of what we're going through right now. So it's a good one. It's the antebellum American period.
I love the antebellum period. That's one of my favorite times. There's a couple good ones right there. There's Calhoun. That's a great biography. I read a couple good ones. What was the one I read this weekend? Hold on. I got to find this real quick because it's worth sharing.
So I think if there's a dearth in our American history that I need to get over, it's the progressive era and sort of the spoil system. I mean, I've read a little bit of it, but not as much as I think I'd like to.
Yeah, there's a lot to go there. So I read this weekend, Can Science Explain Everything by John C. Lennox. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it. Really easy read. It's like 120 pages, so you could read it in a couple hours. And then
what is the answer? Yes or no? Can science explain everything? Lightning round.
What do you think?
No.
And then I also read a book on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin that was really good. Obviously I haven't finished it, but I got through a good chunk of Congress Overwhelmed as well. All fantastics. Although this is more for the nerd, or like the guy that studies Congress. Don't go pick that one up if you're not reading that type of stuff regularly, because that'll be a little bit more difficult. But if you are reading that stuff regularly, pick it up. And then what do we didn't you just read Filthy Rich Politicians?
Oh, I did. Loved it. Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, I found myself going through it. It was a little depressing in some aspects, and then I felt it was a little too tabloidish, like, oh, look at this person, look at this person. But I think at the end it gets wrapped up together really neatly, and I think there's some good suggestions in the back for how you can solve a lot of the problems. But it is one of those challenges where it's a lot of time and effort to run for office, to be in office, and having deep pockets can help a lot. And I think that's where we are in a situation where the rich people do tend to run for office, and that's why we need more average Joes doing that.
Well, and what they say in the book, you need to at least $300,000. You need to, if you're a candidate for office, you need to raise at least $300,000 in your first quarter from your personal network before anyone else will even talk to you. Yep. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wealth barrier. And that is one of the main reasons I ran for office, to let everybody know about it. Because you, as a citizen, have the right to run for office. And you shouldn't have to raise $300,000 from your personal network before the people that control the offices with their fundraising dollars will let you in the room.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was great episode, John. Thanks for sharing the books. Hopefully, go out, pick them up. You can find us on Spotify and Apple. If you can, please leave a review. It helps, get the word out with us. Hit the little star. You get like a little 5-star review. Maybe leave a comment. That's always good. Try to keep it polite and PG and positive. That's always nice. And until next time, peace and love.